Hello friends! So I'm going to be honest and say that my brain is very fried today because I ended up writing 6,000 words of my NaNoWriMo this morning. Long story short, I've got behind because I ended up doing other things this weekend, so now I'm paying for it. And ultimately because of that, the only thing I can actually think about right now is writing. So I thought it might be fun to talk about how I actually write my stories, because I know I don't necessarily do it the way everyone else does it, namely because having an outline really messes me up. I am definitely more of a just do it and see what happens sort of writer. Okay, so generally when I feel like writing, unless it is for an event like NaNoWriMo, is because I already have some sort of a plot in my head. A lot of times these ideas will just pop into my brain out of nowhere, usually when I'm doing something that's completely unrelated to the actual plot. If I want to force myself to think of an idea though, or if I just want to, further out the idea I have, what I do is I go on a walk with no electronics whatsoever. Yes, I even leave my phone behind, which does nearly kill me, but it turns out you can actually live without your electronics for a little bit. Personally, while I love electronics of every kind, I find them to be really useful, but also really cumbersome. So I know that if I have my phone with me, I'm going to end up paying more attention to my phone than the actual thoughts going through my head. And when that happens, I'm pretty much guaranteed to miss some idea that would ultimately turn into a story. It might not be the best idea in the world, and you might ultimately end up writing about something completely and totally different from that idea, but at least your idea gives you a little bit of a starting point to kind of build a plot off of. Once I have some sort of a plot figured out, I like to jump straight into character design. Usually I have some sort of character in my head already, but if I don't, this is going to sound a little weird, but just go with it. What I like to do is I pull up a dating app like OkCupid or something, and I look through a ton of profiles. And I'm not going for people I like, I'm just going for people who look interesting, or sometimes people who look like I think the character should look. And of course you don't want to actually steal these people's personalities, but it can sometimes be a good place to find little tidbits of characteristics you can use to Frankenstein your character together. Say for instance, you see one person who loves their job way too much and another person who's obsessed with trampolines. Maybe you'll write a character who's a workaholic bungee jump instructor. Or maybe you'll hate that idea, and that's perfectly fine too. But just taking a chance to look at some characteristics that you wouldn't normally look at can really spark your imagination. And of course, once you have your plot and your character, it's time to actually start writing. Some people like to outline, but I do not. So I just choose a spot to start at and just start writing and try and kind of follow my plot line. And probably because of that, I personally am a big believer in not knowing where you're going to end when you start the story. When you get to the end, you just kind of feel the end. But I find that when I'm writing, if I have an end in mind, I work way too hard on getting everything to perfectly form to that end, and everything just seems forced. So what I like to do is grab a cup of coffee, because coffee is kind of a necessity when you're writing, sit down, and let your characters figure out where they're going along the way. Speaking of which, I should probably get back to that. Hopefully this has kind of helped explain to you how I write a story. And if not, hopefully this has at least, kept you entertained for a couple of minutes. And if you also write and you have some tips or tricks you'd like to share with me, go ahead and leave them down in the comments. There are very few things in life that are more interesting to me than hearing how someone processes a story. Okay, I really have to get back to it. Bye guys!